Hello, everyone. This is another session where we dive into some of the startups and some of the businesses that have been participating in Creative Business Cup in the past. And in this case, it's very recent in 2023, the Creative Business Cup. But I actually prefer not to say too much about the company itself, because that should actually be presented by the founder. And with me today, by the way, I'm Rasmus. I'm with CBN, Creative Business Network. And with me today, I have Gary Burns. Tell me, what is your business all about, Gary?
Hi, Rasmus. Great to be with you today. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Yes, our business is called Tao Climate. Essentially, we want to stop climate change. That's our purpose, that's our mission, and that's what we're going to do. And the mechanism we're using to do that is a plant called industrial hemp. Now, a lot of people are only growing their awareness of industrial hemp. It turns out it was humankind's oldest cultivated crop, with evidence going back about 12,000 years. And it was used for hundreds, if not thousands, of different applications, from its fiber through to its high energy seeds, until it was banned by the US in 1937, because it was actually doing most of the work that fossil fuels and plastics, which were just emerging. They wanted the market, so the government worked with these interests to have industrial hemp banned. Now, it's been grown in Europe. France is a huge producer, and China all that time, but it was only reclassified in the US in 2018. So hemp as a global crop is really just now re-emerging into its rightful place as the savior of the world. So our business really is all about connecting industrial hemp growers around the world into carbon credit markets. And, you know, the real jumpstart for the whole business was just over 2 years ago, when the X Prize carbon removal contest was announced. Elon Musk put $100 million of his own money into the competition. It's the biggest prize competition in human history. So I had a look at that and I thought, you know, hemp is this amazingly powerful mechanism for capturing atmospheric CO2. Like the European Commission states that 1 hectare of hemp can capture a minimum of 15 tons of CO2 in just 5 months. It's quite amazing, the significance of this data. And then I was exploring what would be done then with the captured carbon, because the X Prize requirement was that the carbon would need to be sequestered for 100 years or more. So I started looking around and I discovered that there's this amazing construction material called hempcrete, which is made from the hemp carbon fibers with some lime and water. And what that is a really amazing material for building housing and infrastructure. It lasts for hundreds of years to lock away the carbon. It actually continues to absorb carbon from the air through a process called carbonation. And compared to concrete and cement, you know, the cement industry is responsible for anything up to 8% of global CO2 emissions. Hempcrete is a much more human material, because it's essentially made out of organic material, and it also has amazing thermal efficiency properties, anti-mold, anti-moisture. So what we did was we put the growing of hemp together with the sequestration of hemp in housing, bring those together to create carbon credits, and then build infrastructure and housing for people that need it. So we're using one problem to solve another.
So actually, let me just make sure. It's always good to, in all aspects of life, to repeat what you just heard if you can. So you know there are carbon credit markets.
Yes.
So where people can buy carbon credits. For example, if I'm flying somewhere and I want to set off my emission, my carbon emission, I can buy credits usually with the airline.
Yes.
And there are different markets for this, right? There's like different broker markets for that.
Yes.
And what you're saying is that, so these carbon markets, they of course they are not just taking the money, they're also using it for something. So they're using it for a way to take carbon out of the equation, out of the climate, out of the the air.
Yeah,
So,
well, you've actually put your finger on one of the problems there, Rasmus, in that if you look at your typical airline emissions offset, which you can typically purchase when you're buying your plane ticket, these do not remove carbon from the air as you're flying. These are typically displacing carbon in kind of different projects, such as, you know, supporting a solar plant instead of a coal plant. So they're not actually removing carbon. They're offering products such as maintaining rainforests. Of course, maintaining rainforests is something we must do, but you're not actually removing carbon from your flight. So we've literally just this week, we've launched a new offset flights product, which you can find on taoclimate.com. So based on the number of hours in which you've been flying, we then use data and science to calculate what your equivalent carbon footprint is for that flight. And then you can purchase that offset in kilograms. And of course, the difference is you're funding hemp growing and making. So the carbon that you've been responsible for in your flight is literally being removed from the air virtually in real time. So if, for example, if you were to purchase a forestry offset to offset your flight or any other carbon footprint activities, it can take up to 40 years for trees to show a net carbon gain. So instead of offsetting the flight you take today in 2063, we're saying you can offset it this year, and you're making a measurable impact on your flight emissions.
So we have the carbon market, and then you are then working with hemp growers.
Yes.
And you're not only working with hemp growers to just tell them to grow hemp as much as hemp as you can with the space that you have, but you're actually telling them also to use the hemp for building materials.
Correct. Now, and multiple other outputs. What we're essentially a technology company, Erasmus. So we're building a software platform which gathers data across the hemp growing and making life cycles, measuring the carbon inputs and outputs at every turn. So we come up with a fully considered carbon credit product. Now, I'll give you another example of what hemp can do. Aviation is a very important market sector for us, which we're targeting heavily at the moment. So you could be in a situation where your farmer is growing hemp anywhere in Europe, anywhere in the world, and then the carbon fiber is trapped in the stalk. Okay, that's the most readily available source of carbon. And then the seeds from the crop are a high energy oil source, which can be used to make, for example, sustainable aviation fuel as a feedstock. Right. So what we're hoping to do, and this is something we're talking with some potential airline partners with, is that they would enable the growing of hemp by putting demand into our platform to say, right, we need to offset our emissions, and we also need sustainable aviation fuel. That demand then would drive the growers to grow the crops, measure everything so it's fully considered, and then supply the raw materials to the sustainable infrastructure model that we have also. So taking a whole plant approach, we can solve multiple problems, in this case for aviation.
Where are the crops grown?
Everywhere in the world. The beauty of hemp.
I probably could imagine they're grown everywhere, but and your so to speak growers are also everywhere.
They're everywhere. We've huge interest from sub-Saharan Africa. We've interest from the USA, Asia, and in Europe. In fact, our main project at the moment, Rasmus, is really exciting. It's actually in Ukraine. So we've partnered with a nonprofit in Ukraine, which is a very rich history of hemp growing and also hempcrete building manufacture. So what they're doing is they're growing hemp in Ukraine, and they're using that hemp dry stalk fiber, the carbon, to make hempcrete apartment buildings in the west of Ukraine for people who've lost their homes in the conflict. So this to us is a real win-win scenario. So that they're capturing the carbon and they're locking it away. We're tapping into the value of that from a carbon credit perspective. So by selling these carbon credits to the market, we're actually helping to fund this really valuable activity. So we're really proud of this association, and it's a great illustration of our overall business model. We're also looking into major technology aspects. We're very proud to be part of the Google Startups for Sustainable Development program, which is a global initiative by Google to assist startups that aim to achieve the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And so we're building out our platform with Google's help, which will include the use of Google Earth Engine satellite technology for crop verification. It's really exciting. Yeah. So verification is an issue at the moment because hemp grows so quickly. It's difficult, to get people there in time to make sure it's being grown. So our vision is to use technology to verify crops have been grown and that the outputs have been made also.
What inspired you for this business, and also how unique is it in the sense that do you have competitors, or are you the first one to think of this connecting carbon offset markets with hemp producers? And actually, what I hear is you're saying is also that you're providing the innovation that these hemp producers need. Or the both in the whole process of growing hemp and then getting it onwards, whether it's seeds for biofuel or if it's for building materials or what it is.
Yes, you're absolutely right. It's all about supply and demand, Rasmus. The inspiration for this, it was partly to do with the X Prize, but it was also to do with the fact that the climate crisis is a very clear and present danger to all life on Earth. And we feel that hemp is the only scalable mechanism that can get the CO2 from the air at the quantities required to close the UN emissions gap, which is about 23 gigatons per year. That's 23 billion tons.
How did you know that hemp was so efficient in capturing carbon? How did you come across that it's not dandelions or I don't know, birch trees or
there's a very famous book by a man called Jack Herer called The Emperor Wears No Clothes, and he's an American writer. This has been huge for the last number of decades. It's available free to read online if you search for it, and he basically states the case of all this amazing benefits that can come from the hemp plant and why it was prohibited. And why it was prohibited was to enable the fossil fuel and plastics industries. And look where that got us, Rasmus. We're in a very difficult situation now. So our vision really is to grow hemp on 1 billion hectares worldwide by the end of this decade. If we can achieve that, we can close the emissions gap and we can literally stop climate change. And, I think everybody is now aware of the scale of the problem and the requirements to take action on our carbon footprints. So what we aim to deliver is a mechanism that's based on science, that's based on data, and it's based on multiple benefits for everybody involved, as well as the planet as a whole.
So do you have competitors? And actually, would you, I suppose in this case, you would like maybe competitors, because the more people that are working on it, the better, or...
That's correct. I mean, we want to grow by partnership. So there are other people around the world looking at hemp in terms of its carbon benefits. We feel we're the market leader at the moment. We're making very fast progress. So I would say our legacy competitors, on one side, you have the forestry carbon offsets, and then on the other side, you would have direct air capture, the big machines that suck in the air and clean it out. Both of those legacy providers are facing problems at the moment, and forestry has been seriously discredited in recent months. And the UN recently said that direct air capture is an unproven technology with unknown risks, and it's also very difficult to scale. Also, direct air capture, they use a lot of energy and a lot of money and a lot of equipment to take carbon from the air. And then what do? They put it in a hole in the ground. From our perspective, that's not a really good use of resources. So what we're doing is we're using nature to do all the hard work, and we're using that carbon then to build useful things for people.
That is excellent. But and it's good that you have this attitude of collaboration also with other people working in the field.
Yes.
So what worries you right now besides, the climate change that's obvious to all of us now,
Yes.
but what worries you right now related to your business?
I think speed, velocity is very important, but we are making fast progress. As I said, we're working with Google to build our next generation platform. That should be happening in Q4 of this year. So we're very excited about getting that to market early next year. And I think as well, it's the education side of things, Rasmus, in that hemp has been discredited deliberately for decades. People associated with drugs. It has nothing to do with drugs. So there's also the education factor at high level, looking at the EU and looking at the UN. For example, the UN says that the hemp stalk and the hemp seeds are exempt from narcotics legislation, but the hemp flower, which is typically used to make CBD, which doesn't have THC, no narcotic effects, that is classified in the same UN convention as opium. And in a country like Ireland here, again, the hemp flower is classified in the same category as opium. This is insane. It's insanity. What it means is that farmers who want to grow hemp for all the benefits it can deliver, not least to the agricultural carbon footprint in countries like Ireland, they have this risk that the police will come and take their crop because they're a fraction of a percent above the 0.3% THC limit, which the EU has set. It's absolutely crazy. So we want to see industrial hemp, the entire plant, removed from all narcotics legislation globally so that we can open up the market for farmers to grow it. And by tapping into the carbon credit value of the crop, we're actually looking at making industrial hemp potentially the most profitable crop that anybody can grow anywhere in the world.
It reminds me a bit of the kombucha situation in the US some years ago, where because of the nature of kombucha, it produces alcohol, and it has to be a very low level of alcohol in the kombucha for it to actually be accepted. And for many kombucha producers, it was actually difficult to ensure that it didn't raise above a certain level.
Right. Wow.
I suppose that's the problem with the hemp growers to make.
It's an unnecessary risk, Rasmus. And, if you look at anti-drug legislation around the world, alcohol and tobacco, which are the most harmful drugs, are exempt from all this legislation. So we really need to catch up, I think, with the evolution of humanity and the needs of humanity in terms of how we treat plants, basically. Legalize nature, that's our motto.
Yeah, I suppose that is a lot about perception among it's not just governments, but it's also the general public that needs to change its attitude towards hemp then.
You're absolutely right. And I'll tell you one factor there, Rasmus, is that the fossil fuel industry worldwide has had billions and billions of euro and dollars in profit over recent decades. They've used that money to own the media and also to own the narrative around potential competitors such as hemp. So we're up against the big boys. It's very much a David and Goliath struggle. We don't have the resources. We don't have that history that they have. But we feel that we've got justice on our side, and we're telling the right kind of story for people.
Yeah, and David won,
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. So, I mean, having endorsement from the Creative Business Network is hugely important to us. Our association with Google is very, very valuable. Like one of the top 3 biggest and most respected companies in the world understands what we're doing and is assisting us. We're also members of the Green Tech Alliance, and we're joining alliances worldwide. So I think we are very much in a reawakening mode at the moment, Rasmus, but we need to keep telling this story of the benefits and the future of hemp and how it can save humanity.
And maybe that's where the link is to creative sector, because when some people might think, why are you part of the Creative Business Network and Creative Business Cup? because it seems like very much agro-tech in a way. But the challenges, or agro-tech, it's tech and it's and climate. But in reality, your business is more about, you just said it, storytelling and making sure that the narratives are being changed. And that is, that is what the creatives can do. That is, creating meaningful narratives that are authentic, that will make us make better decisions for ourselves and for the world. It's I often say that the creative industries are among the most manipulative industries, because it makes us buy stuff we don't need. It makes us all kinds of things, when we talk about what advertising and design and visual communication and storytelling can do. So you really have to rely on a good creative team to get your, when you said speed, to get the message out. I mean, so you have one challenge on having people understand that the best way to set up their carbon footprint is to link it to hemp. And then you also have to pursue policymakers around the world that hemp is not part of a part of drug cartels or that. And I completely agree with you. When we look at, also in Denmark, we have impact studies on alcohol, smoking, and drugs, and the impact of alcohol and smokers is enormous compared to
no, that's a really deep insight, Rasmus. And from a design perspective, my own degree is in product design. I studied at the National College of Art and Design here in Dublin. Cool. Back then it was more physical products. Now it's more digital products, but the methodologies and the reasoning is the same. But design thinking is very important to us as a business. And one of the key aspects of design thinking is to first make sure you're solving the correct problem. So we looked at the issue of climate, and we saw that the problem that needs to be solved is that there's too much CO2 in the air. So that's why we're setting out to solve that using creative technology and storytelling. And hemp then is the mechanism that enables that capture and removal of CO2 from the air at scale. And there are no other options that we can see, Rasmus. Genuinely, if we want to take vast action at a global scale, it's our vision that hemp is the tool that will allow us to do that.
Yeah. I mean, if you can crack the code of how to making consumers think about these things and take the appropriate action, then that could also be used in fields such as food, where we know that switching from meat to plant-based products would be very beneficial to the environment. I remember when we had the climate summit here in Copenhagen. The Economist had a front page where it was the fork or a car key, whether it was a car key or the fork that had the biggest impact on the climate. And in many ways, they argued that it was actually the fork that had.
I'll give you an interesting story there, Rasmus. Just in the last couple of weeks, the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency here in Ireland, they put out a tweet saying, if you eat less meat, you'll have benefits for the environment. Okay. The government then told them to take down that tweet because of the dairy and livestock industry in Ireland being so powerful. So that's the situation we're in, at a government level. They can't actually speak the truth because the powerful forces, the vested interests, don't want the truth to come out. And, the global meat industry is a massive machine. It's not as valuable as the fossil fuel industry, but again, it has political connections, it has the money, and it has owned the narrative for so long. So we're up against a lot of inertia, because the inertia suits the people who are causing the most damage to the environment at a global and a national level.
So that's when we're towards the when we look at what can governments do on a local, national, or European or global level do. I mean, part of it is, something that I'm so old that I remember it was when we were flying, there was a smoking section in the aircraft, so it was actually okay to smoke on aircrafts, and it was actually divided both in business and in economy. They had a smoking and a non-smoking section, which is kind of a joke. So that changed. Took a while, but it changed. So that's the whole changing the perception of the citizens and governments is a huge task that's probably neither you and I will be able to do, but we can contribute to. But when we look at more of the business side of your company, what kind of challenges do you think could be overcome by some kind of government intervention? It could be, that since you're working globally, that your embassies could help you with the right connections. Internationalization efforts are difficult. It could be, financing certain kind of activities that are otherwise not financed. Or it could be support for innovation. It could be protection of certain IPs or enforcing certain standards. I'm just saying there are many ways authorities can address market failure, as you could say. When they invented cars and airplanes, they didn't think of the market that there was a market failure, in the sense that the impact on the environment was not accounted for.
Yes. And there's one really interesting thing happening at an EU level, which is the EU Green Deal, Rasmus.
Yeah.
And it's already starting to make progress, but from next year on, it's going to start making significant progress in terms of forcing companies, starting at the biggest companies and working down, to be aware of their carbon footprint. It's also going to deal with greenwashing, so that all claims about carbon or environmentability or sustainability need to be backed up by science and data. So this is going to be a game changer for many, many industries. And we're positioning ourselves to be in the right place to take advantage of that, because the platform that we're constructing, the technology platform, will enable companies and individuals to measure, minimize, and then manage their carbon footprints by using hemp carbon credits then to deal with the footprint that can't be minimized through coaching and machine learning. So we'll be using AI to develop really interesting and powerful visualizations of where you are with your carbon footprint, depending on where you are in the world, and how that compares to the bigger picture in terms of parts per million of CO2. And then this upcoming red line, the 1.5 degrees temperature rise, and then it looks like we could actually hit 2 degrees temperature rise globally before we know it. So we want to make it easy for people to understand the impacts they're having on an individual level, at a national level, and at a global level, and then show them the ways to help reduce that carbon footprint, and then bring them to our top quality market leading hemp carbon credits to offset the remaining carbon footprint, and in doing so, building a better world, literally.
Sorry for being a bit pessimistic here, because on cigarette packs for a long time, we have been seeing these pictures and these statements that where it's, you have to be illiterate or to not understand the message that smoking is really, really bad.
Yeah.
People still smoke.
Yes.
And I know there's also lots of evidence of a plant-based diets. There are lots of evidence of all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
But we are the way we are, us humans.
Yes.
So just awareness and giving the opportunity. We'll have a really hot planet by the time we pound this through.
Yes, I think there is a train of thought that says that the human brain is naturally lazy, okay? It doesn't want to do work that it feels is unnecessary. That's why we often take mental shortcuts, which are typically mistaken. So you're right. This is a creative goal that I think we all need to share. How do we use creativity, design, communications, and storytelling to make people understand that not only is there a better way to live their lives, but we must embrace this better way, because we've seen the climate disasters this year, Rasmus, all over Europe and all over the world, and they're horrendous. You know, they really are killing people, they're damaging the environment, they're killing wildlife. And, you know, if we, for example, switch off the Gulf Stream, and there's a warning that the Gulf Stream could go off by as soon as 2025, that would be a catastrophe, not just for Western Europe, which would face cold and bitter winters every year, but that would upset the entire global rain system and food production. So unless we want to have a future where literally our children are fighting over food, and we've got billions of people moving out of hot zones that are just too hot to live in, all coming to Europe primarily. Unless we want to have that as a future, we really need to take action now. So we need to get our lazy brains out of, oh, it's somebody else's problem.
It's funny because I don't know if our brains are lazy. I also know there's been some research that we humans tend to look for the negative and look for the trouble and worries and stuff, and that's natural, because if you were in a caveman, then
a hunter-gatherer brain,
you have to have something that gets you out of the cave and goes looking for food. So you have to be worried about, you know, what's that sound in the bushes, or so. And the only way that people can actually change that is to focus on thankfulness.
Yes.
And so being thankful for the earth that we have.
Yes.
And maybe making sure that we really think of all the good it provides us, and this way trying to preserve it, because it seems like the caveman's worry attitude doesn't make us enough worried or enough negative to actually take action to you know, as we would have taken action to go out and get some food. We're not taking action to kind of make sure that the climate is going to be stabilized.
Yes, we're firm believers in the butterfly effect, Rasmus, which is that by taking a small action on an individual level, you could literally help prevent a disaster happening sometime in the future, even on the other side of the world. So if we get enough people taking small actions on a regular basis, all these actions will very quickly add up. So, you know, it's as simple as, I'm not going to drive to my destination today, I'm going to walk. That very, very simple action could prevent a forest fire happening in Greece next month. So if we all kind of get this micro reward system going, and you know, this is how a lot of social media works. It's all these micro rewards and the serotonin and dopamine, and you get addicted to it. So if we can make that kind of activity, that shift happen in terms of doing good on climate and on environment, and if we see more companies getting involved in these kind of activities, there are very many companies doing wonderful things for climate. And they do this as part of their ESG kind of requirements, but they also do it because it's the right thing. And their employees value that, and that's why they love working for the companies. So there's a lot of stuff happening, and I feel if we can connect people in a more active way and say, look, instead of your social media, here's a platform that you can use that will also give you that dopamine hit by doing good and seeing the good that other people are doing. So that's our technology vision.
That's excellent. That's fantastic. Well, Gary, thank you so much. We will follow you on your journey, and it's actually our journey together on this planet. And
Yes.
we'll do what we can to promote you. And I know we will post this interview, and also make sure that all your hashtag and handles and whatever
Yes.
can promote your good efforts. So thank you for being part of this session. Really greatly appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so much, Rasmus. It was wonderful talking to you. I hope to see you again soon. Thank
We'll
you.
be in touch soon again. And thank you. And if any one of you that watching this are wondering, you can look in the comments, and there will be contact information for Gary, and also how you can promote him and his fantastic company, Tao. Thank you.